Greetings. A little over 2 years ago, I took part in a discussion which was recorded in a video on Faithful to God's account. The video can be found under the title Lashawan Qadash Refuted, a primer, and I'll share a direct link in the video description. The reason why I bring this up here is because while the discussion overall was slightly over 2 hours long, we devoted a few minutes to the subject of Jesus' cry on the cross as transliterated in Matthew 27:46. And so I figured with Pastor Kelly Richardson recently visiting the subject of Matthew 27:46, it might be helpful to revisit what was discussed in that portion of Faithful to God's video. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick up at roughly the 1 hour, 13-minute mark, and that's going to play for the rest of this video. The portion is slightly over 6 minutes long. Here you go. Enjoy.
Okay, so what's highlighted here, this is Matthew 27:46, and of course the verse before it and the verses after, but I'm going to focus on specifically Matthew 27:46, which captures Christ's cry on the cross. Now, full disclosure, it may not be Hebrew. It's either, the cry on the cross is either Aramaic, in a form of Aramaic that was very close to Hebrew, or it's Hebrew using an Aramaic verb. Nonetheless, whatever the case, I'm going to highlight the cry on the cross here in the Greek text, right? Now, you see that text there. We can use that to reconstruct the statement that was being transcribed into Greek. And you should be able to see the statement here in the standard Hebrew script. Are you able to see it, whether it's Aramaic or Hebrew?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, so now full disclosure, the only thing that's up for grabs, this is pretty standard, the only thing that's up for grabs is the third word, could be the Hebrew lama, or it could be the Aramaic lema. So I'm just going to put a little yellow thing above that, whether it's lama or lema. That's the only the thing that might be open for question. Now, whatever the case, this sentence now can also be written in the Phoenician script. And if someone had written down back then, we know from after the time of Christ, just a few decades after Christ was crucified, Bar Kokhba minted coins in the Phoenician script, and right around the same time, the Qumran community also was still using the Phoenician script in some documents. So the Phoenician script did exist in the time of Christ. It was still in use in some way, even though it wasn't the only script being used. So someone could have written Christ's statement down in the Phoenician script, and it would look like this. So there's the statement in the Phoenician script. Now, I want to make a point about how to pronounce these words. So, for example, I'm going to highlight the first two words, right? Eli, Eli, or in the proponents of Lashawan Qadash would say, no, it's pronounced Aliyah, Aliyah. But here's the thing. Suppose we were writing down how we think they're pronounced in the Latin script, right? In the Roman script. So they would write Alaya, right? For Alaya, and I would write Eli. We would write Eli for Eli, right? Now, this is significant because the way the Latin script works is even if you didn't have recordings of me and Chapash, us and ISUPK or whatever, even if you didn't have recordings of our voices, you would still know how we thought these words were pronounced based on how we wrote it down in the Latin script, right? So if they spelled it Alaya, that captures their pronunciation, and we write it down Eli, that captures our pronunciation. So I want to zero in on this point. The Latin script captures the pronunciation. It captures the way the writer thinks the word is pronounced, right? The Greek text works the same way. So here's an example. The Greek text could have transliterated it alaya, just alpha, lambda, alpha, I'm sorry. Yeah, alpha, lambda, iota, alpha, alaya. They could have written that, but instead they wrote Eli. And it begs the question, why did this ancient source render it Eli instead of alaya?
Well, let's just
exactly the way we would say it's pronounced. That's the way it is in the Master.
Let's just call it for what it is, because the reality is that the pronunciation that Lashawan Qadash proponents promote didn't exist back then.
Exactly,
it just didn't exist. And the reality is that here you have Christ. Keep in mind, Lashawan Qadash proponents will assert that Christ's name was Yahushai. So clearly, if his name was quote unquote Yahushai, he would have spoken the dialect, wouldn't he? But yet here you have an actual phrase that he spoke in Hebrew or in a form of Hebrew or whatever the case may be. And he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabatani? Like, again, why didn't he say Ahlaya, Laba, what was it? Laba Shaba Kwabatanya or something like that?
Yeah, actually, that allows me to segue into the end. Let me if you can see, I've highlighted the last two letters of the statement, right?
Mhm.
Because this is also relevant, right? So shabaktani, the ani at the end, shabakta is you did it, right? This verb, it's the shabakta is the verb in the past tense, perfect tense, and it's a second person singular, right? You did this, shabakta, or if you did it would literally be pa'alta or something like that, or you wrote would be katabtas, etc., right? The ani at the end is the first person singular pronominal suffix, right? It pertains to me or I. Now, that has relevance because it relates to the first person pronoun. The first person pronominal suffix is just sort of being contracted into the verb, and it corresponds to the first person pronoun. In English, the first person pronoun is I, or in Spanish, it's yo. So now I wrote down the first person pronoun in Hebrew. I mean, it appears on the screen in your lower left-hand corner. And it begs a question, well, how is that pronoun pronounced? Those who know Hebrew, standard Hebrew, would say it's pronounced ani, right? And they would say, no, it's pronounced anaya, or the Torah Night cats would say ane or something like that. But the point is that from this ancient transliteration, this 2,000-year-old transcription, it implies that it actually is pronounced ani, because if it was anaya or ane, that would have been reflected in the transcription. It's not anaya, clearly. Now, again, we get the same kind of situation. Greek could have easily produced it. Greek could have written anaya, right? Just alpha, nu, alpha, iota, alpha could have given you anaya, but instead they put alpha, nu, iota, ani. And that's interesting. The way they rendered the first person pronominal suffix implies the way they understand the first person pronoun to be pronounced. And I think that's quite interesting.